Welcome to the Scarlet Tavern. Grab a drink, take a seat, let's begin. This is where the secrets of Hollywood's darkened alleys come to light. In this episode, we explore the chilling and unsolved mystery of Bob Crane's murder. Known for his charming role in Hogans Heroes, Crane's life took a sinister turn, culminating in a brutal murder that has puzzled investigators for decades. Found savagely bludgeoned in his Arizona apartment, Crane's death stirred a whirlwind of suspicion and intrigue. With theories entwined in scandal and betrayal, join us as we delve into the enigmatic and haunting tale of a Hollywood star whose end remains as perplexing as the life he led. This is Scarlet Tavern, Mead, Murder, and More.
All right, so first we want to apologize for the late releases of some of our episodes. We had some scheduling issues and some upload issues, so that's why we had some changes. So we are actually changing our release schedule. Normally our episodes are released every Friday. However, due to, again, scheduling changes, we are going to start releasing on Saturdays. So we will record on Fridays and release on Saturdays. So again, we apologize for the late delay and the double releasing, but yeah, we had some scheduling issues. So from now on, we will be releasing on Saturdays.
Well, we still got a great episode up here. I got the murder of Bob Crane.
Yeah.
I think Caleb, you weren't even. Did you even know about this guy beforehand?
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I'm the fan of the classic TVs. I wasn't sure if this went back far enough for Caleb.
Yeah, my grandfather watched these.
Oh God! No, it's nothing. Sorry, everyone. Had to geek out a little there on my classic TV. But yeah, we're talking about Bob Crane, probably one of the least talked about murders in Hollywood history, but really he's got one of the most sordid lifestyles out there. Probably would have made some of the current fetish people out there blush out there with some of the stuff. I mean, for his time, this was kind of a little bit of a sneak, a little behind the curtains of what all these Hollywood stars are doing. But we're going to start off with the early life of Bob Crane and his career, kind of leading up to what he was doing before the day he was murdered, just to give everybody an idea of who he was. So let's get into it. So Bob Crane was born in Waterbury, Connecticut, the younger of two sons of Rose Mary and Alfred Thomas Crane. Crane actually started performing at the age of 11 while he played the drums. By the junior high, he was organizing local drum and bugle parades with his neighborhood friends. He joined in the high school orchestra and its marching and jazz bands. He also played for the Connecticut and Norwalk Symphony Orchestras as part of their youth orchestra program. Graduated from Stanford High in 1946, and then in 1948 he actually enlisted for 2 years in the Connecticut Army National Guard. Was honorably discharged in 1950. Never could figure out what he actually did in the Connecticut Guard, but I'm sure it was probably nothing much. That previous year, he had married his high school sweetheart, Anne Teresen. They had 3 children: Robert David, Deborah Ann, and Karen Lisa. Now, Crane was kind of interesting where his Hollywood career didn't begin in the movies or TV. He actually started on radio. He started in WLEA in Hornell, New York. Sorry, everyone. He moved to Connecticut stations in Bristol and in Bridgeport. He got very popular doing that because these radios primarily, the main audience would have been New York City. So Crane was already becoming quite the known radio personality. In 1956, he's actually hired by CBS Radio to host the morning show on its West Coast flagship KNX in Los Angeles. in California, this is where he kind of started really getting into the entertainment of his wit. He would do his musical performance, and he actually had a lot of big name celebrities on his show, to include just a few that you may or may not have heard of: Marilyn Monroe, Frank Sinatra, and Bob Hope. His show got really popular amongst adult listeners that he actually became known as the king of the LA airwaves. Now, while this is all going on, Crane is actually starting to get more ambitious in his entertainment ambitions and trying to get into actual acting. Which led him to guest hosting for Johnny Carson on the daytime game show Who Do You Trust? And he had appearances uncredited with The Twilight Zone, Channing, never heard of that show, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and the General Electric Theater. These are very well before my times. Let's see. After Carl Rayner appeared on his radio show, Crane persuaded Rayner to book him for guest appearances on the Dick Van Dyke Show. Dick Van Dyke, I believe, wasn't he the? He was in Mary Poppins, right?
Dick Van Dyke, yes.
Yes, he was he was a chimney sweeper guy. After Crane's performance on the guest appearance of the Dick Van Dyke Show, he actually got on the Donna Reed Show, and Donna Reed offered him a guest spot on her program. That episode, he played a Dr. David Kelsey, and he did so well they incorporated him into the main storyline of the show. He became a regular cast member, but while this is going on, he still was still working in KNX in the radio there.
I found out this MLS.
Oh, what was Bob Crane's MLS?
So back then it was an 052, which now is a 46 Sierra, which is a public affairs mass communication specialist.
Yeah, that fits.
So he was a radio announcer in the Army.
Oh.
So that's what he did. I had to do a little bit of digging, but.
Oh, that's actually pretty. That fits for him. I can't imagine Bob Crane working in the motor pool.
Because he worked for the Armed Forces Radio Service during World War II.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he was one of the voices for radio during the war.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is why he became so famous.
Yeah. A lot of great celebrities started their careers off in the U.S. Army, especially back then.
Yeah. And then going to, of course, Hogans Heroes about the Army Air Corps.
Well, it was funny. We're just about to get into that. In 1964, he actually left his show, the Donna Reed Show, and I believe he also left his radio gig. In 1965 is where he landed his big role in the CBS sitcom set in World War II POW camp, Hogans Heroes. Now, again, for any of you out there who don't know what the show is about, basically it's a group of Allied soldiers that are in a German POW camp. They're a funny, witty little group of guys. They do sabotage and spy missions for the Allies. The German guards are all idiots, especially like Sergeant Schultz, who would be like, "I know nothing," or the Camp Commandant, who's just a buffoon. It was a great show. Funny enough, the show lasted 6 seasons, and it's actually lasted longer than actual World War II.
Yeah.
So, it's a great show, everybody. If you ever have a chance to watch it, I highly recommend it. Show was a hit, finishing at the top 10 of in its first year on the airwaves. The series lasted for 6 seasons on CBS, and Crane was actually nominated for an Emmy Award in 1966 and 1967. So this is where Crane's his career goes into a bit of a slump, almost a plateau. Following the cancellation of Hogans Heroes in 1971, Crane appeared in 2 Disney films: Super Dad in the title role and a small role in Gus. In 1973, he purchased the rights to a comedy play called Beginner's Luck and began touring it as its star and director. And he would do this. Basically, he started doing was basically what they call, I don't know if they have it anymore, dinner theaters Basically, he would go around.
Still do it.
They still do it? I didn't know. I know this was kind of a thing back in like the early, like the 60s and 70s. Basically, he'd go around the country performing plays at dinner theaters. Now, this is kind of a step down for him in his eyes. He's almost 50 years old at this point, and this is really his main staple of performing and having an income. But as we're going to get into it, this also served another more sinister point to it too.
And a little fun fact is a lot of people believe that Hogans Heroes and MASH were kind of in the same world.
Really? I never heard that.
So one of the main writers for MASH wrote a few episodes of Hogans Heroes.
Oh, really?
So they believe that, because they're set in the same time.
Yeah, one's in Korea and one's in World War II.
But they believe that they're in the same world. And some of the actors that were in MASH were also in Hogans Heroes. So a lot of people believe that they were planning eventually, if these shows didn't get canceled, that they were planning a crossover.
That would have been funny.
That would have been like one of the first crossovers in TV, because they didn't do it much back then.
Oh yeah, no, they never did that.
That cast together, all of them, because MASH was great too. It's one of my favorite war shows.
MASH.
But the people were hoping that they would do that cast together, because you have the comedy of Hogans Heroes, the comedy of MASH, all in a war setting.
MASH, although, went a little deeper there. If I remember, I've seen all of Hogan's Heroes. Realistically, Hogan's was all about the comedy. Like you almost got the feeling it's like, can they actually get out? They could probably get out whenever they wanted. Are they just kind of shamming and just staying in the camp? So now, between these theater engagements, Crane was also guest starring in a number of television shows, including Policewoman, Gibsonville, Quincy, M.E., and The Love Boat. God, I think everybody was in The Love Boat. Everybody was in The Love Boat. Yeah. In 1975, he returned to television with his own series, The Bob Crane Show, on NBC, which was canceled after 13 episodes. In early 1978, Crane tapped a travel document... Tape. Sorry, everyone. I can speak English, I promise. Taped a travel documentary in Hawaii and recorded an appearance on the Canadian cooking show Celebrity Cooks.
Canadians can cook?
I guess. I'm sure it involves a lot of maple syrup.
It probably does. That's probably all they cook with. Canadians aren't real people.
I should just assume all the hate mail from Canada should be coming to me. Yes. Neither aired in the U.S. After his death in the following June. So now, as we're about to get into it, we're going to get into basically the murder and how everything transpired. Just giving everybody a bit of a warning here. This is a particularly brutal thing in there, and during our research, we have included the police reports, the forensic reports, and everything. So, if you got a squeamy stuff...
Viewer discretion is advised.
There you go. Our resident voice actor, Caleb. Someone please hire him.
Please. So I can stop doing this fucking podcast.
Wow.
I'm kidding.
I was about to say. Wow, thank you. Sammy, you did it too.
Please hire me.
Yeah, still, please hire him.
I can do whatever voice you want.
Just whatever, folks. Don't take it the wrong way. All right, so on June 29, 1978, Bob Crane was discovered bludgeoned to death in his Scottsdale, Arizona apartment.
He killed himself.
He had to really want to die at this point. He had been performing a month-long run of the play Beginner's Luck at the Windmill Diner Theater in Scottsdale.
I don't think he had much luck.
No. God. Winfield Place Apartments, this is where he was staying at in Scottsdale during the run of the... Oh, excuse me. On the afternoon of June 29th, his co-star, Victoria Ann Barry, entered his apartment after he failed to show up for a lunch meeting.
They still exist, by the way.
Oh, this place still exists?
Those apartments, they're condos now, but they still exist.
Oh.
In Scottsdale.
Everybody, don't be surprised if we do want to see if there's a haunting of Bob Crane.
The ghost of Bob Crane.
Oh, God. After what we're about to see, Caleb, we may or may not want to actually meet the ghost of Bob Crane. Now, after she entered the apartment, after he failed to show up for a lunch meeting, and discovered his body. Now, initially, when she got in there, the room was covered in blood. Actually, one of the books that I read for research for this, she actually thought at first that there was a woman there because there was like long streaks of blood that looked like someone's hair. She thought it was like Bob had a lady over in there, but when she turned the light on, she discovered, basically she discovered Bob dead. Actually, point of fact though, she didn't actually know it was Bob. The amount of as we're about to see, the amount of damage done to his head and face were so extensive that she couldn't actually determine it was him.
He did not have an open casket.
Yeah, put it that way. Police were actually on scene within minutes of the initial call that was made by the neighbors. Victoria at first could not tell who the victim positively were due to the extensive damage they had. As more police officers came to the scene, they started to note the position of the body, which was lying on his right side in the bed in a semi-fetal sleeping position, head resting partially on a blood-soaked pillow, left hand tucked under the chin, his right arm stretched the length of his body, and the bed sheet came up to about chest high. And around the victim's neck, they actually found a black electrical cord tied with a single right-handed twist. One end of the cord had the electrical plug on it, and the other appeared to have been cut from the rest of the cord. Now, there were no signs of struggle, or the victim had tried or even have had a chance to defend himself from his attackers. So, essentially, Bob was probably sleeping.
He was probably sleeping. He was bludgeoned to make sure he's out, and then being choked. Basically, a garrote around his neck.
Yeah. Now, neighbors were interviewed, and the only thing that they noted was that what was reported from the upstairs neighbors. They had went to bed around 11:15, and they had heard from downstairs Bob Crane having what seemed to be a very loud and angry one-sided argument with somebody. Most likely he was on the phone with somebody and yelling and screaming at them. Now, it should be noted that Scottsdale Police Department at this point in time in their history, they do not have a homicide squad.
Nope.
They have detectives, but they don't have a dedicated homicide squad. So
Scottsdale wasn't really a place where people were
killed like this.
Killed.
Yeah. So already this is kind of setting the tone of how this investigation is. It also should be noted that at this point there is no crime scene tape at all put up there.
Yeah.
So now this is they try to justify it by saying that the media hadn't shown up for this, so there was no need to put the tape up. But nonetheless, it seems like a small but glaring detail to miss, in my opinion. So now, one of the first investigators on the scene, police officer Dennis Borkenhagen, also known as Bork. Borkenhagen. Officer, if Officer Borkenhagen is
not alive,
if his family listens to this, we have nothing but respect for him.
For Borkenhagen,
or Bork, as everyone else on the force known him as. Bork. I am sure his fellow officers.
New D&D character Bork.
City guard is the head of our campaign 2's guard of the school is Bork.
And he's half pig.
Oh God. Oh God. Please, the estate of Borkenhagen, don't hate us. We have nothing but respect for him, because it seems like from what I've been my research of this, he knew his job, he knew his stuff, and actually was able to figure this out pretty quickly. So, honest to God, to the officer, this was
Officer
Borkenhagen. So, known as Bork, a former detective with Scottsdale PD, Bork, as he was known, had rotated out of investigation and was actually back on the patrol division. He was called by the scene commander to help with the investigation. In his report, Bork noted the state of the apartment and what was actually found on the scene. So he described entering the ground floor apartment. The apartment was a 2-bedroom unit with a kitchen toward the front on the right as you entered. To the left was a bedroom. Immediately past the kitchen area was a dining area and a living room on the right, and a master bedroom on the left in the rear of the apartment. There was an Arcadia door leading onto a patio that looked out on the complex swimming pool. The draperies were closed across the Arcadia door. In front of these draperies were an assortment of videotaping equipment, including 3 videotape recorders / players, a video camera, and a TV set. Now, folks, this is the 1970s. This is not today where we have like these sleek little compact stuff. This is big, bulky equipment, and this is a 2-bedroom apartment. Numerous video cassettes were also in view around his equipment. In the master bedroom next to where the victim lay, Borkenhagen noted that an array of photographic equipment was present. This equipment included developing trays and photographic chemicals and a device for making enlargements from negatives.
So, and I'll say that definitely plays a big factor, because I don't know if we get into it, but there were rumors running around that he would record sexual content with women.
Oh no, this wasn't rumored. It
was rumored.
It was rumored.
They found the evidence.
And then, no, this actually.
So that's why him talking about this equipment makes a big deal, is because the rumor is that he was videotaping them without their consent, and it turns out that he was. So he wasn't this innocent man that everybody thought he was.
Yeah, exactly. There were several strips of 35mm film in the bathroom. A photo enlarging apparatus set awkwardly on top of the toilet. The negatives were photos of naked women engaged in numerous sexual acts. Borkenhagen noticed the apartment was a mess, with junk all over the place and miscellaneous items strewn about. In his words, Bob Crane was living like a college kid, not like a man just weeks away from turning 50. Borkenhagen noted that although the rooms in the apartment did not appear to be orderly, they did not show any signs of a struggle having taken place in any of the rooms. Reinforces the theory that whoever came in Bob was not aware of this person. And there were no signs of forced entry into the apartment. The front door, according to Barry, was unlocked. The Arcadia door leading out to the patio and the pool was locked. Whoever the killer was, Bob Crane either willingly let them in, or they had just let themselves into the apartment. So, as you're starting to say, one of the big motives that's going to come into this in the further along the investigation is the sexcapades, basically, of Bob Crane, and they are bad. Like, even today, this would be... You would almost feel like Bob Crane was really a porn star, not So, on June 30th, the deputy medical examiner for Maricopa County, Dr. Thomas Jarvis, performed the autopsy on the unembalmed body of Bob Crane. Jarvis. Officer Borkenhagen was present along with Lieutenant Ron Dean. So the official medical examiner report lists Crane as 49 years of age with brown hair and brown eyes. Crane often told people he was 6 foot tall. I do the exact same thing. He was 70 inches, 5'10", and weighed 191 pounds. First part of the autopsy involved Dr. Jarvis simply prodding and observing the body, and examined all the obvious signs of trauma and bruising on Crane's head. The type of death is listed as violent, the manner by blunt instrument or in cord. Abnormal findings: abundant dried blood on face, hair, upper chest. The autopsy report also noted a flaky white dry material in the pubic hair, right lower abdomen, and right anterior thigh, likely semen, although it was never tested. This is actually, they were upset about this because they would have liked to know if the semen was Bob Crane's, or if it was possibly one of the main person that they had a suspect they had in mind as the suspect may have masturbated over Bob Crane's lifeless body after killing him. Borkenhagen asked that the semen be collected. Dr. Jarvis apparently blurted out, "What's that going to tell you? That he had a piece of ass before he was killed?" Great doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Jarvis, you should have been fired.
Yeah, clearly, I don't know what Dr. Jarvis was used to doing, but
Not his job.
Yeah, his job was not one of them. That was the end of that. Borkenhagen said the Emmy's office was their domain, and in that room, Jarvis ran the show. He didn't press the issue any further. Jarvis examined the marks from the electrical cord that had been tied around Crane's neck. The report describes the wound as slightly depressed and circulating ligature mark around the neck, 3/8 of an inch in diameter, traveling the upper body of the larynx. The report notes that contusion, also known as bruise, of the left lower lip, small contusion of the right lower eyelid, contusions of the left upper eyelid. Confluent with a contusion of the left temple, the fatal injury. This is what killed him, a hit to the head. The medical examiner cleaned the fatal wound around the injury for a more detailed look. The examination revealed two parallel, horizontally oriented, contused lacerations behind the left ear, each an inch and a half long. Blow had also fractured the skull and caused it to cave in about 3/4 of an inch. Caleb, that's pretty bad. That's rage right there.
Oh yeah.
Skull's a thick bone. That's not easy to do. The skull fracture was oval shaped and measured about 4 inches by 2.5 inches in diameter. Dr. Jarvis needed to look at the brain to fully understand the extent of the injuries. He made an incision at the base and the skin and scalp. The skin and scalp covering the forehead was folded down over his face. The section was folded over the nape of the neck. Basically, they are peeling his skin away, folks. Skull was opened to reveal the brain, and signs of trauma from a blunt murder weapon were clearly visible. Noted in the autopsy report was a deep contusion of the brain, left temporal, left frontal lobes, and thalamic nuclei. I have no idea what that is.
Thalamic nuclei.
Thalamic nuclei. Sorry, folks. I'm always bad at pronunciations. There was minimum aspirations of blood into the lungs. Crane was knocked out instantly by the vicious first blow, and the damage compounded by the second equally powerful blow. He, all likelihood, died within a minute or two of the first strikes to his head. Crane's thoracic cavity was sawed open in the sternum, and his internal organs could be examined. Otherwise, besides that, he was in good health for his age. Heart, liver, kidney, and also were all healthy and functioning. He probably would have lived. He would probably have lived at least another 30 years, I figure. Stomach contents, partially digested food. They determined the time of death estimated around 3 or 3:30 a.m. And of course, cause of death was his head injury, manner of death, homicide. So now, as this is going on, the police already have a suspect in mind, and he just so happened to do the courtesy of introducing himself to them already at the beginning of the investigation, and indeed almost from the moment of the first statements taken, one name started popping up to the police: John Carpenter. No relation to the director, right? That's his name, John Carpenter. Yeah, not that. Different John Carpenter. This is a different John one. John was described as a close friend of Bob's for many years and actually traveled with Bob to many of the venues for his dinner theater productions. He first got on the police radar when the police were still at the scene of the murder, and John had actually called asking to speak to Bob. Police did a preliminary interview with John, and almost immediately John is trying to he's trying to put himself in there. He keeps asking them questions like, well, what happened? Was he shot? Did this happen? This and that. He's asking a lot of questions. He's actually more so than by what a friend or acquaintance would probably get involved in.
Yeah.
He's trying to, as some of the police officers described, he was trying to insert himself into the investigation. Now, after this preliminary interview, they actually figured that while John was in town for a business meeting, what as he would call it, 90% chasing tail with Bob to 10% business. They had actually rented a car. The police decided to search the rental car John was traveling while he was in Arizona. They actually found the car, and in the trunk of the car they found blood smears. And upon testing, they actually determined the blood was from somebody that was type B positive, which is what Bob Crane was, and Carpenter was not. Now, type B positive is actually a rare blood type. Not very many people have it. Now, keep in mind, folks, this is also before DNA testing, so there's no way to determine if this is actually Bob Crane's blood or whose blood. They have no idea. The other thing they know is that this car is spick and span except for the trunk, and it's not like Bob Crane went anywhere. It was like something had just been put in the trunk, and they took it out and it smeared the stain on the trunk. Police were able to determine that nobody at the rental dealership had actually hurt themselves while they were servicing the car, and Carpenter was asked, like, "What, did you hurt yourself?" Like, no. Well, why is there blood in the trunk? Well, I don't know. So he was actually asked formally to give an account of his movements on the night of the murder. Carpenter, this is Carpenter's account. He attended the performance of Beginner's Luck and once again sat at the VIP table. After the performance, Bob went out to Crane's car and noticed that the right rear tire was flat. They went to fix it at a gas station and went to Crane's apartment. He recounted an angry phone call between Bob and his strange wife, Patty, leaving, and then they left to go to a place called Bogart's where they met another person. There they talked at the bar and invited this Carol Newell, who was the person they met, to join them at the Safari for breakfast. I guess this was a diner or someplace. They piled into the car. Basically, they drove around to her there and met somebody else there, Carol and Bear. Joined them a few minutes later. They ate breakfast and chatted for about an hour. They all left the Safari Hotel around 2:30 a.m. Crane and Bear with Carpenter and Newell. Carpenter took Newell back to his hotel. That should have been her hotel. Sorry about that. Crane had told that he was alone, had struck out with Carol Ann Barr, so he did not have any kind of intimate relations with anyone that night. Carpenter said Crane had told him that he was in his undershorts and editing videotapes. Carpenter reminded Crane that he had a flight out of Phoenix at 10 a.m. the next morning, and Crane had appointments the following day. Carpenter said that he would drive himself to the airport so Bob could sleep in. He said he would call him once he was back in Los Angeles. Carpenter originally told the police that he spoke to Crane about 1 a.m. the night of the murder. He later would revise this and say he spoke to him at 2:45 a.m. So he's already changing the story. He turned in his rental car at his hotel the next day, and he left and flew back to Los Angeles and didn't know, and went back to work. Again, police had asked if he had injured himself when he would have. That would cause them to believe when he was in Phoenix. He had not. Crane had not. He said Crane had not injured himself or cut himself during that time. He said that he asked if Crane usually did cut himself shaving. He used a double razor. The police asked the Carpenter if he had loaned his vehicle to anybody. He said he had not. He asked if the car was ever left unsecure or given to a valet. He said no. He said during his time in Phoenix, there was only 3 people who were in that car that week: Bob Crane, Carol Newell, and himself. He said the car was not in use. When it was not in use, it was always locked. Now, at this point, the police are convinced that this John Carpenter is their man. He's literally the only one who has access to Bob's apartment. He has, by his own account, nobody could have gotten into the car. So this is our suspect. This is who the police believe did this. However, Maricopa County, am I pronouncing it right? Maricopa County DA felt that there wasn't enough evidence that linked him to the murders. Now, police had theorized that the weapon that would have been used to kill Crane would have been a tripod of a video camera, but nothing was ever proven conclusively. Keep in mind, there's no murder weapon. They have nothing. They have a dead body. They
also have no motive. What's his motive to kill him?
As we'll see there, that's going to come out later, years down the line. The motive that's presented when they finally do get some DNA testing done and they do get enough evidence to go to trial. That's exactly what happened in 1990.
92.
92. He is arrested and charged with the murder. They were able to do a year or so before, they did some actual more DNA testing not available at the time. They discovered evidence and photographic evidence of the car's interior that appeared to show a piece of brain tissue. But the actual tissue samples recovered from the car had been lost, but the Arizona judge ruled that the new evidence was admissible, and in 1992, Carpenter was arrested and charged with Crane's murder. Now, at the trial that had happened in 1994, Crane's son, Robert, had actually testified that Crane had repeatedly expressed a desire to sever his friendship with Carpenter in the weeks before his death. He said that Carpenter had become a hanger-on and a nuisance to the point of being obnoxious. And this is a direct quote from Robert. My dad expressed that he just didn't need Carpenter's kind of hanging around anymore. Robert testified that Crane had called Carpenter the night before the murder and ended their friendship. Now, understand, the reason why John Carpenter is around is because John Carpenter, during the time when Bob Crane was murdered, was actually an executive salesperson at Sony Electronics.
Yeah.
So this is
all that video equipment he was getting, all of that is coming from Carpenter.
Yeah.
And I believe Carpenter knew exactly what it was being used for.
Oh, they would join in. They were cruising around. That's why he's hanging around them, because Bob is bringing in all the ladies, and John and Bob are engaging in these sexual acts together in some cases. So he's riding the coattails of this. He's getting women galore that he never would have been able to get in his own.
I mean, Bob Crane wasn't a bad-looking dude.
No, he was a
heartthrob back then.
Oh, absolutely. And plus, everyone around him said he was naturally charismatic. Ladies loved him. And, yeah, it didn't hurt that he was, very well-known and famous.
Yeah.
I mean, most of these people would have seen Hogans Heroes.
Yeah.
Now, Carpenter's attorneys attacked the prosecution's case as circumstantial and inconclusive. They presented evidence that Carpenter and Crane were still on good terms, including witnesses from the restaurant where the two men had dined the evening before the murder. They noted that the murder weapon had never been identified or found. The prosecution's camera tripod theory was sheer speculation, they said, based solely on Carpenter's occupation at the time. They disputed the claim that the newly discovered evidence photos showed brain tissue and alleged that the police work had been sloppy, such as the mishandling and misplacing evidence, including the crucial tissue sample itself. They pointed out that Crane had been videotaped and photographed in sexual relations with numerous women, implying that any one of them might have been the killer. Other potential suspects proposed by the attorney included angry husbands and boyfriends of the women, and an alleged incident where some actor had sworn vengeance after a violent argument with Crane in Texas several months earlier. So, as this goes, as you could probably guess, Carpenter was found not guilty. He was acquitted. Up until the day he died in 1998, he maintained his innocence. And frankly, I'm shocked that they even brought this to trial.
Yeah.
You have as I said, there's no murder weapon, and the chain of evidence is...
Yeah, but somebody as big as Bob Crane, they want to solve the case. They don't want it just lingering.
I mean, realistically, Hollywood kind of, after he died and all the his escapades came to light, I kind of just forgot about him. Probably mostly because nobody wanted to answer the question of like, how did he get away with all these pretty heinous acts, and nobody heard about it. So now we're going to move into the last part of this, is where the theories and motives. So, as we said, Bob Crane was a known sex addict and notorious for filming his many sexual acts with women using home video equipment provided by John Carpenter. Again, worked with Sony Electronics. This was the foundation of the friendship with John, utilizing and setting up the equipment they would use for their various sex acts, and Bob using his fame and charisma to attract women. This arrangement lasted for a while, but according to Bob's son, his father was starting to grow tired of John, and again described him as obnoxious and hanger on. Plus the fact Bob had started really understanding the equipment. When this all started, this stuff was new and a novelty, but by the time his murder, it was still expensive to buy the stuff, but it was becoming more and more user-friendly.
Yeah.
So he really didn't need John anymore. John was just convenient to him. Now, that's the more, I guess I would say, the more likely scenario. Another theory, again, also provided by his son, would be his involvement with his estranged wife, Patty. So, this all started after having an affair with his Hogans Heroes co-star Cynthia Lynn, the actress who played Helga. Crane became romantically involved with Lynn's replacement, Patricia Olsen, in 1968, who played Hilda under the stage name Sigrid Valdis. Crane divorced Tezerin, his first wife, in 1970, just before the 21st anniversary, and married Olsen on the set of the show later that year, with series co-star Richard Dawson serving as the best man. Their son Scotty was born in 1971, and they later adopted a daughter, Anna Marie. Robert Crane Jr. later revealed that his father, Bob, was not the biological father of any of Olsen's children when they were married in 1970. Patricia was already pregnant, but Bob had a vasectomy in 1968 while he was still married to his first wife. Crane and Olsen separated in 1977 and were a mere weeks away from finalizing their divorce at the time of his death. Robert speculated publicly that his father's widow, Patty Olsen, might have had a role in instigating the crime, as he is quoted saying, "Nobody got a dime out of the murder," he said, "except for one person," alluding to Crane's will, which excluded him, his siblings, his mother, with Crane's entire estate left to Olsen. He repeated his suspicions in the book that he wrote about this. Now, it's interesting, but the DA at the time, Rick Romley, responded, "We never characterized Patty as a suspect," adding that they were convinced that John Carpenter murdered Bob Crane. Officially, the case remains unsolved. Now, to kind of put a cap on all this, it doesn't solve anything, but in 2016, the Maricopa County Attorney's Office permitted Phoenix television reporter John Hook to submit the 1978 blood samples from Carpenter's rental car for retesting using more advanced DNA technique than they used in 1990. Two sequences were identified, one from an unknown male and the other too degraded to reach a conclusion. The testing consumed all the remaining DNA from the rental car, making further tests impossible. They turned up 2 blood vial samples from Crane and Carpenter located in evidence storage at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. Carpenter voluntarily gave his samples back when he was questioned in 1978. Crane's blood was obviously recovered during the autopsy. So, essentially what happened with this is it actually made it even more confusing, because the two DNA things were found. They weren't Bob or Carpenter's blood. They were just other blood in there.
Yeah.
So it really just kind of answered some questions, but it made it even more mysterious, because at the end of the day, who murdered Bob Crane? So
the world may never know.
Yeah. So Caleb, now that we've gone through everything, you got a theory on this?
I mean, I think John Carpenter did it. I think that his son's right, that he wanted to get rid of him. He had no need for him anymore. And how else would the blood get there? Nobody else used the car. How would that blood get there? It was essentially positive for Bob Crane's blood. I mean, B positive blood is not common. Mm-hmm. And I find it really suspicious that he was trying to throw himself into the investigation so much if he had nothing to do with it. Most people would be in shock. They would be in awe. I mean, his best friend just died. Exactly. Why is he not freaking out? Instead, he wants to know everything that's going on. So I think John Carpenter did it.
I tend to agree with that. He has, I mean, again, as we said before, isn't it interesting, you know, quote unquote sexy thing to think that the estranged wife, just weeks away from losing everything, has her soon to be ex-husband whacked, literally, and she gets everything? Or what's the more opportunity thing? She has no access to his apartment. Not really. She was known to pop up, but I sincerely doubt she would have just done that. Carpenter had most to lose from it. He loses access to this lifestyle that he's been going through. He can't, all the beautiful women, everything. He loses it all because Bob doesn't need him anymore.
Yeah.
And I think he really got lucky that he did this in Scottsdale instead of Los Angeles, because if this had been in LA, he would have gotten caught. The LAPD would have been looking for a murder weapon. They were it almost seems like when I was researching this, there seems to be no attempt, not really, to find this murder weapon. They figured, once they figured out who John Carpenter was and what he did, they realized, hey, could a tripod of a camera do it? Yeah, I could do it.
Yeah.
And that's what they concluded. Where's the tripod? Nah, we don't know. Nah, he ditched it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is the murder of Bob Crane, a beloved celebrity, but one with a dark and sinister past, and did his lifestyle was his lifestyle the untimely cause of his death, or was he simply unlucky? We'll never know, really.
Yeah. So, we'll be continuing over the next couple weeks in our Hollywood murders, with a few well-known names. And then starting to wind down for the end of the year. We will be taking a break, obviously, over Christmas and things like that, and we'll come back in January with a brand new season, and I think we're going to kickstart the next season with probably one of the biggest topics we've ever discussed. So,
yeah.
But yeah, so I want to thank you guys for visiting the Scarlet Tavern. Please remember to push in your seats, to turn in your glasses, and always tip the bard. Good night, everybody.
Good night.